Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. My name is Richard West. I'm a Denver sports fan. Obviously forgot to wear that hat again. And stumbling through my own intro. I think I just need to stop doing this one for the spooky videos, but whatever. Today we got more Mr. Nightmare. Now there is this warning here that says re-uploading this content to YouTube or any other platform is not allowed and will be removed. But I don't think that's what they mean. I think that's because a lot of TikTok users will repackage content and try and pass it off as their own. That's not what I'm doing, so I don't think this applies here. I'm just reacting to it because I love his videos, so I hope this isn't a breach of whatever. I don't know. I don't think this applies to me. I don't know. But yeah, this last video that I did was the 3 night shift stories. Those were really good. Today we got 3 disturbing true winter horror stories. Now, this one feels fitting to me not only because it's almost 5 a.m. and I won't have to worry about being scared here in a little bit, but also it is nearing the end of February into March. Spring football is about to start up. At least at the time we're recording this. I guess this is probably coming out later. But yeah, as we're exiting winter, I feel like now is the time to have the winter horror stories. I won't have to deal with it pretty soon. It's actually, it's still February. It's been like spring weather outside, honestly. It's already there. It's been over 50 degrees, and it just got done, like, snowing. It was like, now it's all dried up. It's pretty nice. So, let's go ahead and get into it. Hope I don't get too scared again. If I'm looking around like this, it's because I'm keeping an eye out for Selena. I don't know what a winter horror story entails, but...
My family has a little vacation home in Colorado. My parents are avid skiers.
Love Colorado.
Which was the motivating factor behind that purchase.
Okay.
The home has been in the family since before I was born. It's definitely showing its age in a lot of ways, but it's also like 40 years old. It's not gonna look new. My dad's had to do a lot of upkeep on the place over the years. It's still in our family today, and it's really on its way out at this point. My dad talks about knocking it down and putting up a new place, but I don't really get involved in his decision. This story takes place like 15 years ago when I was 8 and my brother was 11. We were up in Colorado during a blizzard. The snowfall was insane, and of course, my brother and I had to go out and play in it. The great thing about going up there when we were kids was the sheer amount of space. The property has a huge opening with woods surrounding in all directions. There's a dead-end road that goes downhill which leads to a few more, almost equally big properties. It's the perfect layout for hide-and-seek or snowball fights or any number of games like that. My brother Josh and I went out in our snow gear to play our snowball fight game with our own...
Okay, I just gotta say real quick, this is such a vibe. The only thing that's bad about it is that it's in the middle of the forest. This, first of all, perfect image to use to portray this idea, because really that is what you do at that point. Like, if you're gonna buy land out somewhere, middle of nowhere, secluded, like, you just get that double wide, put that there, something like that. Like, that's what I would love to do. Get a double or single wide, just have that driven out to wherever you're at, place it on the land and get that set up. For me, this would need to not be so secluded, and it would need to be like right on the road, like preferably like closer to civilization. You know what I mean? It's like away but close. You know what I mean? I just, in an emergency situation, get your security cameras, get your gun in the safe. That still doesn't make me feel safe enough. I like people in the vicinity, you know, if I needed to call someone. But yeah, everything else here is great. It's just, you gotta think about this stuff like, how does this look at night, you know?
My brother Josh and I went out in our snow gear to play our snowball fight game with our own little custom rules. Basically, we'd set up 2 forts. We could pick our forts to be anywhere, but we had to tell each other where we were picking. We would then make one giant snowball as the so-called jewel that we'd have to successfully steal from the other base and bring back to ours. Josh chose to make his base on the nearest neighboring property. There was almost never a car, like 9 times out of 10 that we'd go there, so we'd often play games on their property too since they were never there. What we'd do is build little walls to emulate a fort, and then put the big snowball behind the walls. So to get to each other's bases in this game, we could either cut through the woods or take the road up or down to get to the opposite fort. Once Josh ran down the road and disappeared, I was supposed to wait for him to blow the whistle to signal that the game began. I waited for a while, like a long while.
But what is the game? I don't understand this game, man.
He had already set up his fort by then.
Like, is that not weird? Like, you just go get it and then bring it back. What's stopping you? What's the conflict? Getting hit by snowballs? That's it?
All he had to do was get back down there and blow the whistle.
With multiple people, I could see how it could work.
Maybe the 10-minute mark is when I decided I probably just couldn't hear the whistle from there, so I started plotting my route.
Okay.
Was it better to go through the woods or down the road? I opted for the road because honestly, going through the woods during a blizzard at 8 years old was a scary thought. I started trudging through the unplowed snow on the ground as flakes of snow blew into my face. With the amount of layers my mom made me put on though, I wasn't cold at all. As I approached the driveway to the neighboring property, I looked through the trees and didn't see Josh over there. With all the brush and trees bare in the winter, it was quite easy to see through the woods. So I cut into the property through the trees to kind of sneak in, but Josh was literally nowhere in sight. I saw his fort, so I looked around, and when I could confirm he wasn't anywhere in sight, I approached his fort to grab the jewel. Before I could, I heard a woman's voice yelling out, "Excuse me, are you looking for your brother?"
Ooh.
I turned in the direction it came from, and it was an older woman at the front door of the neighbor's house. I called back that we're playing a game. She responded with, "Your brother's in here." I was very confused. I started walking towards the front steps of the house, and as I got closer, the woman's face got clearer. To my
I like that
8-year-old
blur.
mind, she looked a lot older than she probably was. As I got closer to the house, I noticed at one of the upstairs windows, there was someone looking out at me. For a second, I actually thought it was
Ew.
Josh. It was someone with half their face covered, presumably by a black beanie, and the bottom part of their face covered under the bottom of the window. I also noticed another trail of footprints leading to the front door. They had to be Josh's. The woman was giving me a
Something's
very
wrong,
creepy smile.
something's wrong.
I remember
Ew.
that feeling of my heart dropping for some reason.
Yeah, that's
She waved
creepy.
me inside to come in and get out of the cold. I stopped dead in my tracks and screamed, "Josh," but there was no response.
Fuck
The woman
that.
stopped smiling. She didn't expect me to do that. I also noticed that the other trail of footprints was doubled over. If it was Josh, his footprints turned around and headed back towards the woods.
Oh, hell no.
I then heard heavy footsteps from inside the house. They sounded like they were upstairs coming down.
Run.
I started to
Run,
run.
run, run, run,
The
run,
woman
run, run.
screamed
Oh my
something
God.
at me or someone else that I didn't understand. I looked back once at the house.
Oh, this
and
is so
that face
creepy.
that was upstairs at the window before was no longer there. I ran off the property back on the road, running through my previous footsteps. I started to hear my dad's whistling from up the hill, the whistling he'd do to get my brother and I home at dinner time. When I made it back to our driveway, my dad and Josh were there already, having been on their way to get me. Before I could even try to explain what just happened, Josh was already telling me that there were people in the neighbor's house telling him to come inside. I said the same exact thing happened to me, so my dad went down there with some kind of weapon in his hand while we waited in the home with our mom. He came
Hell
back
no.
after a long while and said that the front door was locked and no one was answering. So
Uh-huh.
we went to another neighbor's house, and they knew the owners of the house and they called them.
They weren't
This
there.
part still gives me chills whenever my dad mentions what he was told. The owners of that house were not there that weekend. Nobody was supposed to be in the house. The cops were called and everything, and my brother and I did have to speak to one of the officers on scene to describe the woman. After that, we were no longer involved. According to my dad, the back door was unlocked and the house was investigated, which turned up nothing. For this reason, my parents took home any extra valuable things in fear of a break-in while we were gone.
Ah,
After
man.
that day, we steered clear of playing on that property, just from the creepiness factor of that memory alone.
Yeah, makes sense. Dude, I really love the stories where they're caught though. Like when they find out like what the person actually wanted, or like they had weird things on them. You know what I mean?
Thank God we didn't go in that house.
That is creepy as fuck. Like I'm glad the dad took action too, though. You could like, I feel like the way I grew up, the way my family was, they're just like not concerned with any, like there's no sense of danger, no sense of being an adult responsible for children. You could go through all of that and like run scared back to your family, extended family, whatever, and like say everything that just happened to you. It's like, well then you need to stay off their property. Like, bro, did you not hear what I just went through? You know? Anonymous. Interesting. Does he just
I've
come
been
up with these
skiing for
names?
as long as I've been able to.
Does he just like, he just makes up the names of the submissions? You know what I mean? And he just chooses when to say anonymous, because why the hell would you ever email? I mean, just like lie about your name in the email at that point.
Fuck.
You know,
My
like
parents used to ski competitively.
why say anonymous?
That's actually how they met. So it was really important to them that my siblings and I learned as early as possible.
I didn't hear this part. I'm
skiing.
sorry. I was yapping. My bad.
I've been skiing for as long as I've been able to walk. My parents used to ski
Another
competitively.
skiing
That's
related
actually how
story.
they met. so it was really important to them that my siblings and I learned as early as possible. Fast forward about 20 odd years, and that's how old I am now. This story happened to me a few winters ago when I was 21 years old.
Okay.
I was a senior in college. Everyone knows the best skiing accessible to the Northeast is Vermont. It was going to be a trip like any other. It was me, Jaden, Rylan, and Amir. I can't remember for the life of me what mountain we were skiing that trip, as Jaden had booked the whole thing and Rylan was driving. What I do remember was that it was massive, with like 7 ski lifts covered.
Wait, I'm sorry, who are these names?
Remember for the life of me what mountain we were skiing accessible to the Northeast is Vermont. It was going to be a trip like any other. It was me, Jaden, Rylan, and Amir. I can't remember for the life of me what mountain we were skiing that trip, as Jaden had booked the whole thing and Rylan was driving. What I do remember was that it was massive, with like 7 ski lifts covering all the different peaks.
Low taper
If I had
massive?
to guess, it was Killington. We skied nearly 2 full days, and I'm sure there were still
Interesting
trails
choice
we
of
missed.
name.
That's how big it was. It was the second day. After skiing the day before, we had a pretty good grasp on the trails we enjoyed, so this day would mostly be about testing ourselves and pushing the limits, as per tradition. I'd also be lying if I said we didn't have a handful of fireball shooters to liven things up.
What?
We were having an extremely enjoyable trip.
Oh.
The double blacks never got boring, and racing down each slope was its own little game. We had maybe an hour left until the lifts closed. We were all exhausted, but we knew as soon as we hit the road to head home,
Damn.
we'd instantly miss the mountain
These sound
again.
effects are killing me.
We were contemplating how we would end the trip at the top of the lift, when 2 girls without their helmets made their way over to us. Now this might sound a little odd to
These
some
breaths,
people,
man.
but I wouldn't be doing this story justice if I left out this detail. The girls, one brunette and one blonde, were drop-dead gorgeous, and I don't say that in any type of strange way. They were just objectively 2 of the most beautiful women I'd ever seen in person. It was disarming. They introduced themselves as Taylor and Devin, and we started making small talk. They basically told us that they were bored because the mountain was full of older folk, which was actually something I had remarked to my friends about the day before, so it made sense why they approached us. A group
That's how you know there's trouble. No woman, it doesn't matter who the crowd is, no woman is going out of her way. She will more readily seduce the older men with money than to say, I'm bored. Either that or she's just like flat out, like no standards, tongue out and ready, you know,
group of young guys
at the
that
sight
seemed
of
around
another
their
human
age.
being.
Devin seemed like a really seasoned skier, as she kept asking Amir all these technical questions about his skis. Him and Rylan actually own their own expensive skis as opposed to renting like Jaden and I always did, which the girls seemed to be impressed with. Taylor made a comment about our shooters, and we jokingly told them that the alcohol unlocked our true ski potential or something dumb like that,
Cringe.
which they found funny. To our surprise, Devin pulled out an unmarked bottle and taunted us, calling us bitches for sticking to a drink as tame as Fireball.
Hell nah.
The 4 of us welcomed the challenge and happily swigged some of their bottle, which I could tell sent Rylan a little over the edge. He tends to drink more than he could handle, so this wasn't too surprising. I made a note not to drink too much because something about this whole situation just rubbed me the wrong way.
Oh, you think?
I still had trouble believing that these 2 girls would want anything to do with some dumb kids like us, especially since we were all wearing helmets and our faces weren't exactly visible. Things were going really well though. Amir was being his usual overly flirtatious self, but Taylor seemed like she was into it, so I didn't complain. I figured we were just going to spend the remainder of our time on the slope with these girls, which I didn't really mind too much. Hell, maybe they knew something we could do after the slopes closed. Just then, Devin asked us if we had skied down a trail called Devil's Forest, a name which I definitely didn't recognize. Our other friend Chase would have had the trail map memorized as he's literally a walking GPS, but he wasn't with us. We told them we hadn't, and they explained that it was a glade trail that's a little obscure and rarely open. For those who don't know, glades are basically trails that extend in between trees so that you're skiing through a forest. We actually enjoyed skiing glades more than anything else, so this Devil's Forest trail piqued our interest.
Nah.
We told them we were game,
Suspicious
and they
as hell.
motioned for us to follow them. We reached a choke point on our skis, and they told us to take them off because we had to walk slightly uphill for a short while. I could tell we were in a relatively desolate part of the mountain, as the snow was perfectly fresh and there was no one around. The thought of an adventure was kind of invigorating though, so I thought nothing of it. Drunk and curious, we clipped our skis off and followed the girls up the mountain.
I mean, why would you ever be... I don't care how comfortable you are, why would you ever be drinking in the mountains? Like, bro.
Amir and Rylan ran ahead, presumably to flirt some more with them.
I could not
Jaden
do that
and I hung
ever.
back a little bit to give them some space.
Well,
As we followed, I could tell Jaden looked a little wary, so I asked him what was on his mind. I like to think of us as the rational, level-headed ones in the group. Amir was too unpredictable and impulsive, and Rylan would follow a girl if she led him off a cliff. Jaden said that it was weird that this supposed trail would be inaccessible from a ski lift, which I agreed with. I had never had to walk uphill to reach a trail before. We agreed to just keep a keen eye on things. What could two girls do to a group of 4 big guys anyway? They led us into the forest, and the terrain finally started leveling out. Jaden and I caught up with the group, and it was apparent that Rylan and Amir had both made considerable progress. Rylan had his arm around Devin, who was smiling and laughing. They pointed in the same direction we had been traveling, which had all of a sudden become a downward slope. I sighed, knowing this was another instance where we could have used Chase's help. He would have known exactly where we were and where this trail would have led. Jaden was still skeptical and asked the girls if they were sure that this was a real trail. They responded yes and told us that it would also take us right back to the lifts. Before I could say anything, Devin pulled the bottle out again and told us we had to finish it. Amir and Rylan happily took some hefty swigs, but when the bottle got around to Jaden, he said he was drunk enough. As soon as he spoke, I could have sworn Devin's smile became a really angry scowl for a split second, but by the time I blinked, she was smiling again. I must have been the only one to notice because I looked around at my friends and their expressions were all normal. She put on a seductive smile and batted her eyes at Jaden,
Ew.
asking him nicely. He reluctantly grabbed the bottle
Why
just to shut
give
her up.
her in? Give in to
By
her.
the time it got to me, I put the bottle up to my mouth but didn't actually drink. Everything about this encounter was triggering alarm bells suddenly in my head. I handed the bottle back to Devin, who put it away. I noted that neither girl drank this time around. It dawned on me that I hadn't seen either one of them drink anything this whole time. I checked my phone, half an hour until the lifts closed. I tried to come up with some excuse for why we couldn't ski this trail, saying that we wouldn't have enough time to get back up and down the mountain to where we had parked. The girls insisted that we'd have enough time and that the lifts were connected on the bottom anyway. Then, without warning, they told us that we were wasting too much time and took off toward the slope, telling us to follow them if we could. Amir and Rylan immediately followed, clearly hoping for a favorable outcome at the bottom. Jaden and I obviously didn't want to, but figured we had no choice but to follow, so that's what we did. I let Jaden lead the way, because after all, this was still a challenging looking slope, and skiing in the forest is no joke. I'm not sure what I was expecting, but when we made it to the bottom, I was relieved. The 4 of them were at the bottom of the slope, laughing and flirting like they had been before. Jaden and I caught up with the group, but something was wrong. There wasn't a lift in sight. We were still surrounded by forest on all sides. I sternly asked the girls where the lift was, and they told me to stop worrying and that it was close by. Then they said they'd take us there in a few minutes. I relaxed a little, assuming that I was worried this whole time about nothing.
Dumbass.
As I was rubbing my eyes,
Bro.
I heard a distinct thump in the snow. I opened
Ew.
them to see Rylan, who was literally passed out on his back in the snow. The girls laughed, calling him a lightweight, but I could tell it was more serious than that. Before I could even react, Amir slumped over too. I started freaking out, and I rushed over to them, unclipping my skis. I thanked my lucky stars that they seemed to be breathing normally, but I was beyond horrified. Jaden took a step towards the girls, asking them what the hell was going on. They seemed genuinely shocked, saying they have no idea what was wrong. Jaden took another step before he too passed out in the snow.
Screw
I stared
that.
in shock,
Oh, hell
still
no.
trying to wrap my head around the gravity of the situation. I just couldn't fathom that this was happening to us. My
You
head
couldn't?
started
Really?
spinning.
Like, you made all those decisions, went along with it, drank from a random bottle from random people you just met who weren't drinking, and were taking you somewhere you've never heard of, unmapped. You followed them the whole way, never thought once about it. And you couldn't believe that it was happening to you. Really.
And I
What
was
a
sure that I was
fucking
next.
dumbass.
The girls had stopped pretending by now, and they looked at me like they were waiting for me to pass out. I felt myself getting dizzy, so I sat down in the snow, even though I wanted to stay on my feet. I demanded to know what they had given us. They didn't respond or even move for that matter. I yelled at them over and over again, but they still didn't react. I wanted to get up, but I quite literally couldn't stand. I didn't pass out though. I kept my eyes open the whole time. Eventually, Taylor turned to Devin and said something along the lines of he must have not drank enough. She looked more pissed off than anything. Devin cursed before telling Taylor that they had to go. I was still frozen. After unclipping their skis, I watched them take Amir and Ryland's skis before trudging off into the woods. I had to do something, but my body still felt numb. I couldn't just let them walk off with my friend's skis. I knew they wouldn't be able to move that fast carrying 2 sets of skis each, especially through the snow. Another few minutes passed, and I started to regain control of my body. I stumbled after their tracks in the snow, but it was actually freakish how far they'd gotten, even with all that added weight. Eventually, I turned a bend and saw them in the distance, way ahead of me. I figured as long as I kept them in sight, I'd be able to track them down. I followed for a couple minutes, and that's when things got crazy. The forest gave way to a clearing, which I could see turned into a road. We must have literally been on the opposite side of the ski mountain, which made sense looking back. That's when I noticed the van parked in the distance. I stopped in my tracks at the edge of the woods. The side of the van opened, and 4 big-looking dudes stepped out to intercept the girls.
Jesus Christ.
The girls motioned for the guys to get back in the van, and one of them turned and pointed directly at me. That's when I realized I was in too deep, and also felt like an idiot for leaving my helpless friends unconscious in the woods. The guys from inside the van seemed to be debating whether or not they should leave or chase me, and I wasn't waiting another second. I started wobbling back the way I came, knowing I'd be able to find my friends on the account of the tracks I left behind in the snow. I found them, still passed out. I figured Jaden had had the least to drink, so I tried shaking him awake first. After a couple of handfuls of snow to the face, he was awake enough to talk. I told him what had happened, still in shock. We tried waking Amir and Rylan up, but had no luck. Jaden and I figured we had no better option than praying those guys didn't decide to track us down, but they never came. I might not be telling this story if they had. We waited about an hour for our friends to wake up, and when they finally did, we told them everything. We had a million questions. Who were those girls? Who were those other guys? What were they going to do to us? It was chilling imagining what could have happened had I not been quick enough to pretend to drink. Best case scenario was that
Quick enough? Bro, you took forever to catch on.
Have just woken up robbed, but even that would have been horrible. Something tells me that no one would go to those extremes just to rob some broke college-looking kids.
Yeah.
Besides, who really keeps valuables on them when skiing? I guess Amir and Ryland's expensive skis were worth stealing, but it still felt like overkill. Plus, how would they have even known that we had expensive skis with us as opposed to renting? Things didn't make sense. Finding the car was hell. Reporting it to the police was hell. The drive back home was hell. The people running the mountains swore they'd identify those people, but we obviously had to get back on the road and couldn't verify that. The police took it a little more seriously and told us we'd be updated should anything come up.
So nothing
I think
came
it
up?
even made local news, but it's been years now, and they obviously never found everything. To this day, we have no idea what kind of roofie they even gave us. Nothing online described anything that was so effective so quickly, especially in a moderately small amount. Our best guess was that the substance was a mix of drugs, which makes sense because all my friends were feeling kind of woozy after they woke up. Those girls and whoever else was behind the whole thing were some sick people. I can only hope it was just an elaborate robbery and nothing more sinister.
Yeah, that one's crazy. That one is, creepy as fuck. H.R. Wells, okay.
This is gonna sound a little weird, but bear with me. Every winter, my friends Kyle, Ricky, and I have this little tradition of walking out onto this frozen lake a few towns over.
Hell no.
It's not some grand event or anything, we just do it for fun. There's something about the vibe of being out there on the ice, surrounded by the quiet stillness that feels almost otherworldly. It's just one of those simple things we've always enjoyed.
Still, like,
Call us
I could
weird,
not
but
do
we
that.
can never get enough of the serenity. If you've ever been out in nature by yourself with the only sound being the gentle patter of snowflakes, you know what I'm talking about. It feels like you've got a piece of nature all to yourself.
I'm gonna be honest, okay, so I understand. I was one of the essential workers during COVID. And so there would be, I'd be there for the closing shift, didn't have a car. So I would be there from 4 p.m. and I would Uber to work at like 3. And I would be on the closing shift so we wouldn't get out till like midnight, not even midnight. It was like 1 a.m. And then Ubers were not out at the time because it was COVID. No one was doing anything. Everything was closed. And so that meant I had to walk home. Unfortunately, that was a 2-hour walk every night. But during COVID, that was kind of nice in the way that he's like describing. It wasn't snowy at all. But it was empty, it was quiet. Doing a 2-hour walk and not seeing anybody, not seeing any cars, like literally any cars, and doing that every single night was bizarre and also peaceful and also depressing and also just, it was like you're the last person on earth, basically, is what it was like. It was so crazy. So I get it, but also snow in the mix, no thank you.
Always turn out great too.
That
which is
ruins
a
the
huge
whole
plus
vibe.
for a couple of edgy guys like
Also
us.
being on ice where you
This
could...
happened this past winter. It's April
No.
as I'm writing this, so about 4 months ago now. I know what you're probably thinking, but don't worry, none of us fell through the ice. That's not what this story is about.
Thank God.
It was snowing pretty heavily that night, which was the main reason we decided to go. It had been consistently below freezing for a couple of weeks too, so we were relatively confident the lake was completely frozen over. I'd personally take winter over summer any day of the week. I bet all my friends would agree.
I don't understand those people at all. I've never understood it.
There are about a million reasons why, but one of them is as simple as the snowfall itself. First of all, it's just pretty. What I like most about it, though, is that you'll never find yourself in complete darkness. Even after sunset, the world isn't entirely dark. The light reflecting off the white snow blends day and night, so you're left with this really surreal feeling that doesn't arise from anything else. The moon was also pretty full that
Yo, whoever wrote this does not live where snow falls. You are fucking making that up.
night, so that feeling was amplified. Kyle was driving that night. He had a pickup that handled pretty well in the
The only people that ever say I prefer winter over summer are the same people who, after, dealing with snow being on the ground, like feet of snow and like almost being snowed in, if not being snowed in, they're the ones who are like, okay, this is enough winter already. I can't wait for summer. Like immediately they flip. So it's like you romanticize winter, you romanticize snow, but when you're actually in it, you know it sucks. You're full of shit, dude.
snow.
I can't
so we
stand
just played
people
it
like
safe
that.
and let him drive, even though Ricky was usually the one who chauffeured us around.
Kyle, Ricky.
The lake itself is surrounded by a thin forest, so we couldn't actually drive all the way to the water's edge. I don't think forest is the right word. It's really just a cluster of sparsely scattered trees, but it's more than enough to prevent a car from driving through. We parked in a nearby lot and got out of the car. It was freezing out. The three of us bundled up and walked toward the lake. I didn't smoke at the time, I still don't, but Ricky and Kyle both do, so they lit a couple of cigarettes as we walked. I think it was after midnight, but I can't say for sure. All I remember is that there wasn't a soul out there. Not an animal, not a person, nothing. No movement whatsoever besides the three of us. We reached the lake, and as we anticipated, it seemed completely frozen over. The three of us were laughing about something stupid when Kyle picked up a small boulder and chucked it onto the ice,
Why'd you have to be laughing about something stupid? Why couldn't you just be laughing about something?
testing its integrity. It didn't even crack. So
Damn.
we took that as an indication to make our way towards the middle of the lake. We obviously didn't go super far on the ice, that would have been careless, but we did venture a decent ways away from the ledge. We were maybe 100 feet out when something caught our attention. On the far side of the lake, near the edge where the trees bordered the ice, something big and dark was moving.
Ew.
We stopped talking
Bigfoot.
immediately. We just stopped in our tracks, watching. Whatever it was large, hunched over, and moving slowly toward the lake.
Bigfoot.
Finally, we realized what we were looking at.
Bigfoot.
It was a bear.
Oh, fuck.
Ricky was the first to say something. He whispered, "Is that a bear?" as quietly as he could. I didn't answer. My heart was already racing. If it was a bear, the last thing we wanted to do was draw its attention. We stood there, frozen, not even daring to breathe too loudly. But then, as the figure moved closer, something felt off.
Oh,
The
no.
way it walked wasn't quite right. Too upright. Too human. It also looked like there was something dragging behind it. Nothing about it made sense.
What the fuck?
It was one of the most bizarre things I'd ever seen. And that's when it straightened up completely, and we realized the truth all at once.
Oh, no.
It wasn't a bear. It was a person. A person wearing some kind of bear suit.
Why? What the
Kyle
fuck?
said, "What the hell?" in a low voice, and I was thinking the same
Ew.
exact thing.
Ew.
I know it doesn't sound scary in a generic sense, but if you had been there, you would have been terrified too. I tried to respond, but the words wouldn't come. I don't know if I was more afraid or confused, but something told me to stay quiet. The figure kept moving toward the ice, dragging something behind him. At first, it was hard to tell what it was. The snow blurred the details, but as he got closer, I realized he was holding a rope that was attached to the thing he was dragging, and a few moments later, we could see it more clearly. It was a small black bag. It looked like a smaller-sized garbage bag, if they even made those.
Yep.
Either way, it was chilling. We stood there, unsure of what to do.
What do you
My
mean?
mind was screaming at me to turn around and leave, but my body felt paralyzed.
Moron. Come
I couldn't
on, dude.
move.
Go.
I don't think Ricky and Kyle were too keen on turning around and leaving either, because neither one of them flinched. I probably wouldn't have left right then, even if I hadn't been so scared. I needed to know what that person was doing. And then, as if the situation couldn't get any stranger, the man unzipped and stepped out of the bear suit.
What the fuck?
Seeing him as a person didn't make things any better. He wasn't particularly large or intimidating, but there was something unsettling about him. We watched as he bent down, presumably to pick up a rock, but I couldn't tell from so far away. And then the sounds started. He knelt down, holding what looked like a rock, and began repeatedly slamming it into the ice.
Oh, fuck no.
It might have been placebo, but I swear I could feel the vibration in the ice even from the distance. He was trying to break through, most likely to dispose of whatever was in that bag. Ricky tapped my shoulder, and I turned to see him and Kyle moving back towards solid ground. Without a word, I followed suit, and the three of us tried to move quickly without making too much noise. Every step felt deafening in the quiet, even though I knew there was no way that guy could hear the crunch of snow from that far away.
Hopefully.
We barely made it a few yards when a voice yelled out, "Hey," from behind us.
Oh, fuck that.
I didn't even look back. I just started running, praying that guy didn't have a gun.
Fuck
The
that.
cold didn't help. I found myself starting to get winded after not even a minute of running. I don't know if he followed. I don't think he did, but in that moment, we were in full-on panic mode. We reached the edge of the lake, and at that point, I was gasping for breath. After a very short break, we made our way back to the car silently, and Kyle drove off immediately. None of us had any idea what we had just seen. Kyle said it was probably someone dumping their trash, but I told him that was ridiculous.
Are you dumb?
Who in their right mind would dress up in a bear suit in the middle of the winter to illegally dump their trash? There was no way.
Into water.
Ricky said it was definitely someone dumping a body, but I told him the bag was way too small for that.
Body
The three of
parts.
us talked about it the whole ride home, but we couldn't agree on a definite explanation. We never got an answer. The reason I'm thinking about this now is because my mom was watching TV the other day and an old missing persons report popped up on the screen. It was a child from around our area, and the timeline of his disappearance matched up pretty closely with what we had seen on that lake. I'm not jumping to conclusions. I know it's a long shot and probably just an unfortunate coincidence, but I can't help but wonder if those two things are somehow related. By the time you're hearing this, we've probably reported our sighting to the police.
Damn, man. Okay, those were really good. The second one was more irritating than anything because, like, why the fuck? Like, none of the story made any sense. Like, you know what I mean? The two that were flirting with the girls, I guess. You know what I mean? But the other two, the two of you that were like weirded out by it, you kept going along with it. Like, you can't even say that you were just thinking with your dick because you weren't at all. You were doing the opposite while your friends were doing that. The third one was really, really good. That type of thing is like very interesting to me when they have the bizarre elements of it. And it's not just like a scary person doing something shady. You know what I mean? Because a lot of these stories do need, you know, it pretty much boils down to that. When you have something like incredibly bizarre going on, like that, walking around in a bear suit, dumping a body, slamming a rock into the ice, like that's bizarre. That's hard to explain, and that's scary. That's so creepy that it's like you feel the tension. We need to get out of here, you know? So I want to hear some more like that. That last one was really, really good. The first one was creepy, but it was like more normal, and it was like the stakes. They really ramped up the stakes throughout the video, I feel like. So another great video from Mr. Nightmare. Again, I love this channel. I hope this isn't violating any of the, you know, whatever he said at the beginning, and, you know, because really, genuinely, these videos are awesome. Comment down below if you want more scary reactions like this. Comment any suggestions you have, any reaction requests. That is the video. Thank you for watching.